begin. Just one more time, for those of you who just joined us, my name is Natasha, and on behalf of Elsevier, it is my pleasure to be your host today. Thank you very much for joining our session, Medical Education Since the Pandemic, Challenges and Emerging Innovations in Assessment. I can personally assure you that today we have an extremely exciting and a very, very pertinent panel discussion installed for you. But before we go into the discussion, I'd like to share some housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded, and a recorded version will be available on demand. A link to the recorded version will be shared with all the registrants. This session is being conducted in a Zoom format, so we would love for you to interact with our panel and ask questions. There's a little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So at any point, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box, and we will take them up at the end of the panel in the last few minutes. There will be poll questions during the panel. So while the panel is continuing to share their opinions in the background, we will also be flashing some polls to get your opinions. We would really appreciate it if you could take a minute to share your opinion. It would really help us in understanding our customers better. And finally, your feedback is extremely important to us. At the end of the session, we will share a link as well as a QR code for you to give us feedback, and also you will also have the opportunity to click on the feedback link at the end of the Zoom session. So please do share your feedback. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our panel for today. We have an esteemed panel of guests: Prof. Andrew, Professor of Psychiatry and Head of Department at RCSI and UCD Malaysia campus; Dr. Bikramjit Pal, Associate Professor and Head of Department of Surgery at RCSI and UCD Malaysia campus; Prof. Dr. Rusli Nordin, Professor of Public Health Medicine and Head of School of Medicine, Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences at Taylor's University; and Prof. Win Min Thien, Associate Professor, School of Medicine, Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, Taylor's University. It gives me great pleasure to invite all of you to our panel today. Thank you for being here. Our panel today will be moderated by Mr. David Gain, E-Product Director for Education from Elsevier. I'd like to open this discussion by sharing exactly what our topics will touch upon today. So we opened this by saying that we're talking about medical education 1 year post the pandemic. In this 1 year, there have been a lot of innovations in medical education, and our goal is to share these innovations with all of you. In addition to the innovations that have already been adopted, we are also going to talk a little bit about the gaps in student engagement, as well as the need to improve learning outcomes and improve the way we are doing assessments in medical education today. So these are the key topics that we will be touching upon during the panel. Without much further delay, I'm going to hand it over to David now. David, all yours.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you everyone for your time today. I'm looking forward to a very interesting discussion with our distinguished panelists. So firstly, I would like each of our panelists to just very briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll start with the questions. So if Professor Norden, you could start just a minute each, and then we'll dive into the first question about strategies and innovations that your universities have adopted over the last 12 months to support online learning.
Thanks, David. And I welcome everyone to this Elsevier webinar. And I'm Professor Rusli Nordin. My background is public health medicine, and I'm also the head of School of Medicine at Taylor University in Malaysia. It's about 1 minute, David.
That's very good. Excellent. So, Professor Bikramjit, please.
Hello, I am Dr. Bikramjit from Surgery, RCSI UCD Malaysia campus, Penang. Thank you, David. Welcome to all the participants. Wish we have a very good discussion about what we have done and how we can do, and what are the new technologies or strategies we have taken. Thank you.
Professor Thien?
Yeah. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to meet you all, and it's my pleasure to be here to share the experience. My background is orthopedics and medical education. I am program writer in Taylor University, Phase 2, to get up our post-prosperity. Thank you so much.
And finally, Professor Law.
Hi. Lovely to be here, and thank you for the invitation. So, I'm the professor of psychiatry, also head of department of psychiatry at RCSI UCD Malaysia campus. I have been in Malaysia for 5 years, and I worked at in 2 different institutions, and hope today we are going to have very good discussions.
Thank you very much. And so the first question is for our panel to share the strategies and innovations that they've adopted over the past 12 months as a result of the pandemic to continue to enable their students to learn during this very difficult time. So Professor Norden, sort of 3 to 4 minutes each.
Thanks,
I hope I won't be too strict about that.
Thanks, David. Well, first of all, to introduce Taylor's medical program, ours is as soon as a 5-year MBBS program, divided in 2 phases: Phase 1, Phase 2. Phase 1 preclinical, and Phase 2 a clinical. Phase 1 is a 2-year program, and divided into 2 semesters. We have 4 semesters in Phase 1, and then we have the remaining semesters in Phase 2. I will be concentrating mainly on the Phase 1. My colleague, Prof. Win, will concentrate on Phase 2. So basically, as you know, in the time of COVID, we also equally have facing the same challenges that all of us face, trying to manage a medical school, trying to bring in innovation, engagement, and also trying to bring in some form of focus on our assessment. So the first thing is that I think importantly is that in the School of Medicine in Taylor's, we had over in the course of drawing up the program to deliver to the student, right? We have to think about out of the box in terms of what are the strategies. The first one, of course, in the times of the pandemic, we have number one is of no access to hospital at all, especially because hospital are becoming COVID hospital, and therefore that brings up an issue of what strategies are we going to do to teach students. That will be covered by Prof. Win in Phase 2 in terms of clinical teaching and assessment. In the Phase 1 program, preclinical, which is based in our Lakeside campus, we actually have had a stable of methods of doing this. Number one, of course, the online teaching, as you know, is commonplace everywhere, right? Online. That covers all the theory, the PBL, the seminars and whatnot. That covers that. The only issue is that some of the teaching that we used to have, such as some visits, for instance, had to be curtailed. Visits to some of the primary care facilities that we brought students had to be curtailed. One of the innovation that we introduced, the first one is that we call it the brick and click. Brick and click actually takes into account the strategy of both the combination of face-to-face and online, because in the later half of the of this pandemic, we are able to bring some students, local students, into our program to come back to campus in small numbers. But the bigger chunk, of course, as you know, these are our international students. We have to do it as online. So it's a combination of a locally taught student in the campus, especially in the some of the laboratory session that we had, and these are beamed to our students which are elsewhere. So this method of teaching, combining both face-to-face and online, is called the brick and click method. And of course, we are lucky in the sense that during this time, we have access to clinical key. I think clinical key has been a very important contribution to all this endeavor, because it's a one-stop center for students, and that brings us to a lot of opportunities for students to engage meaningfully while at home, looking at the material and the assessment, targeted assessment, feedback, and so on, which is one stop. So I guess hand in hand with our traditional methodology of teaching and combining with what clinical key has to offer, I think this is also one form of innovation that we have introduced into the school, especially in this preclinical. So, and then of course, the other thing is that during the assessment component, later on I think we can go into detail that the method of delivering assessment also a big challenge because of students are scattered everywhere, different time zones, as you know. We had to give them a lot of briefing to make sure that they align with our methods. And but we are lucky because we have a very able group of colleagues to deliver the online using both the strength of Zoom method together with what do you call this our Times. Times is our Moodle-based what do you call this in this university. So very lucky, and the proctoring of the exam has been done very well. And I guess we're very lucky also because we did not encounter any major problem. Although we are in the beginning, we are bracing ourselves for many of these problems, like internet glitches, and so on, and issue about knowing what students are doing during exam, worry about integrity of exam, and so on. So I think I just stop there at the moment, and perhaps let David move on with the other speakers.
So
I will believe more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was very, very insightful. So Professor Bikramjit, you're a surgeon, so I think you might have some specific problems that in the last 12 months.
Thanks, David. Well, the MCO started suddenly. Almost we have not even 3 days to plan our strategies and techniques. And at that time, our final year is coming for the exam is only 1 year, 1 month around. So we have to go into your classroom in a different way. So some of the things we changed, which is not a radical one, but we just convert into our traditional teaching into an online mode. The lecture classes, which were supposed to have almost around 120 students, we break up into small groups, not more than, say, 20 to 30. Why we did it? Because we want the students' attention. Otherwise, it's very managed for a lecturer or a tutor to go around and find out who is coming and who is not coming. So initially, we found the lectures. We started with 1 or 2 lectures. Then you break down the lectures. And then we designated at least 4 to 5 tutors to start at the same time, same topics. So the students have no way can go to other lectures, or before that they can come for an assessment. Once they finish their lectures, immediately they go for your online assessment. Specifically, we ask for the MCQs. Thanks to Clinical Key, we already prepared the MCQs. That opens immediately. So they can answer, we give them some time, say 30 minutes or 1 hour, and they can assess themselves how much they scored. And also there is an option to come back and again do the MCQs. The MCQs are prepared from the bank, and we always vet those MCQs before you give them, we give them to the students. So this is one we thought about our clinical keys, where MCQs, how it add up to our lectures and how you assess them. Well, it is a kind of formative assessment. You give them feedback, and we will tell them your score is not that good, but individual feedback, because they don't want like giving the feedback in front of all the students. Second important things, which is our main problem, how to continue with our clinical teaching. Well, that is the most important part. We have a lot of difficulties. So we started with your video clips. We use extensively from Clinical Key. We have RCSI standards video clips. We use Society for Simulation in Healthcare from US. We use YouTube videos. We show them standardized videos, let them practice, then give a feedback and come to us. What happened to you? What are the problems? So again, we go back to the videos, and then we teach them what are the pros and cons. Well, once we do the videos, during a formative assessment, after some time, we show them some videos which are not correct, incorrect videos. So we show them both the correct and incorrect, and make a small group of 5 to 6 and let them comment on the videos. So they discuss among themselves, they point out these are the mistakes, these are the things, their shortcomings, these should not be done in that way. And then we ask them for, okay, how you rate yourself. If you point out these mistakes, how you rate the videos and how you rate yourselves. And they give very nice feedbacks. Well, I think this is not the correct way to do. And I can rate this video 6 out of 10. And that is a kind of good learning. At least we can engage them and they have their own way of self-assessment. Well, the clinical things, what we taught them, mostly our examination procedures, the techniques, and sometimes we have a long case. That was, we have a role play. So some of our tutors tell, okay, I'm the student. So this is the short history. Ask me how to ask history. And at the end of the session, they give the feedbacks. So these are some of the ways we changed. Well, initially, we have a lot of problems to have our tutors to have to know how to come across, but somehow we have done it, and I think it's not bad from our context. The last student feedbacks, what you got online was quite encouraging. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and lots of innovation there, done very, very quickly to help students learn, which I think is fascinating. So, Professor Then, if you could kind of give us some of the thoughts about how you've approached these challenging times.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, all of you. Actually, one, the pandemic. So we have two challenges. One is how we will deliver our curriculum, and then second thing is how we will assess our students. So now I start to discuss about how we will deliver our curriculum content. So as you all know, we have generally we can divide into two, theory and clinical skills. So in theory, generally, if you look at we from face-to-face to online teachings, it looks okay, not quite compromised, but like just now, the Prof. Vikram and Prof. Loosely discussed how we will engage how we will grasp the student engagement. This is really challenging for us. So just now, I was thinking, Joe, you present the video. So not only medical students are facing so many challenges, and also medical lecturers are facing so many challenges during the pandemic. So most of the students, they off the video. We do not know why they are sleeping or they are listening to us. Right? Some of the students they give excuses. Our internet connection is not good, something like that. So how we try to improve our student engagement is there. Actually, it is not new, but last time we did not give too much attention. So we do something like the breakthrough lectures. In between, there is some activity like the formative assessment with the Elsevier quiz. So around 45 minutes discussion, we get a 15-minute break for the students. They also have we need to understand the digital attention span. So we can talk 3 hours, 4 hours. So how many hours they can listen to your lectures? We have to understand this. So even they will open the video, they are thinking in the other way, the other errands are. So because of this, we have to understand the student psychology also. Because of this is the real challenge, more challenge. If you're face-to-face, even you can engage easily, but in online teaching, student engagement is more challenging for us. So this is one thing what we do is if there is a long sessions in between the break, and then give the same activity like the MCQ or quiz or other activities. So around about 15 minutes. So this is the what we did for theory. So for clinical, it's actually more challenging. Our traditionally belief without the patient, we cannot train the medical students. Even if you ask me, last 2 years ago, so when you can run a medical school without the hospital, I will say no. But if you ask me, yes, I will say yes, I can run. So Actually, like just now I said there, principle is there, information is there, but last time we do not aware about this. So all of you, some of you also remember that the hardened the spice models in medical education from hospital-based to community-based. So if we do not have the hospital, how we will train our students? We try to think of to train in community. Actually, community is nothing new. The place we stay, the home we stay is our community. So our students, they have their family, they have brothers, sisters, their parents, their community, they have their, they also have their own, sometimes, maybe some students have their chronic morbid and comorbid mother, father, parents, right? So this is their patients. So what I did is that I asked the student to record their video to examine their own parents or brothers, sisters, some of the students, they stayed together in the hostel, they examined their self-recorded video and then sent to me, and then I rated it. So even some of our faculty members are joking, if we keep on doing like this, after 5 years, we need to give the certificate to the family member also. They also start to learn some of the medical terminologies and the way how we will examine the patients. So we also educate the whole family members. So it's, I understand is that, yeah, this is really improving. Student to train the psychomotor skill, yeah, it is really promising, but that student record the video and then we rate, but there is some limitation. Yeah, I understand that because our university is relatively less students, so I can still manage. If university, very big university, this may be challenging. So you may need a lot of lecturers to edit the video, right? So anyway, I feel that it is really promising. The student psychomotor skill is really improving in this matter. So
I think that's a great it's a great idea, that using the resources you have, your family, to do this sort of to substitute for the hospital. It's a wonderful idea. So Professor Law, can you tell us a little about how you've managed through the crisis and what initiatives you've adopted?
Yeah, it is quite a crisis, so to say, and I think with our university is a little bit different compared to Taylor's or actually any other Malaysian medical schools, because our structure, curriculum, the first 2.5 years, they actually spent in Dublin. And we over here in Malaysia, we do the 2.5 years of clinical component of the training. So for the first 2.5 years, what I know about RCSI in Dublin, what they would do under such a situation is that they would have all these, they have a very big simulation center over there. So they could actually do quite a bit of online and virtual teaching for the preclinical students. And over here, me being a psychiatrist, actually, it was a little bit difficult at the beginning because we are so used to basically doing everything face to face, and all of a sudden, everything is online. We have actually. Then it turns out not so bad because even before the pandemic, we do have a very good virtual learning environment. We have, for psychiatry, we have a lot of these videos for the students to look at different psychopathologies and things like that. So we continue to use that quite a bit. And for our lectures, we just put that online, and that's not too much of a problem. Now, I think the biggest challenge for psychiatry is that because we do a lot of flipped classroom-based learning, and so and now doing that online, it seems like the participation becomes a much bigger issue, and it's very difficult, I think, for the faculty to actually control the participation, and when they're not in front of you. So that's probably the most difficult thing that we have, and we just have to break things up a little bit to make students to focus a little bit more, and we have to introduce quizzes, and like my other colleagues are suggesting, more of that, and I think make things better, and but still, I would say compared to face-to-face, is not quite the same. And with the clinical part of the training, fortunately now we can have the students back on campus to do the clinical workshops, so that helps a little bit. But during the pandemic, when we can't have students here, we try what we call doing things like virtual patient contact. And again, for psychiatry, it is easier because even in real life, we do consultations online during the pandemic anyway. So I think it's partly because we don't do a lot of physical examination. So I think that makes things a little bit easier. And we can have these virtual consultations simulated with patients and with our simulated patients. So that helps us quite a bit. Yeah, so I think for psychiatry, that's what I can tell you about.
So that's fascinating, and it's interesting, the difference between different types of medical teaching and different disciplines, to see which are more or less affected by this. I'd like to move on to the second question, and we've touched on this a little bit in everyone's comments about how to keep students engaged. And we've heard this around the world, that even medical students, who are amongst the most dedicated, the most kind of, eager to learn and committed students, even they have found it hard to keep up their interest. They're separated from their cohort, their peers. They may not get to see them, particularly students who've started medical school without ever having met the rest of their cohort. So I'd like to kind of touch on two topics. One is strategies for engagement, and we have you've all mentioned some of these things, but the other thing I'd like to talk about is strategies that you've learned now that you're going to retain after the pandemic. When you revert back to having all the students on campus, are there things that you've discovered that you would continue to use now? We've certainly heard some great examples, around the world, of people who are like, oh, actually, this is a better way of doing what we were doing, and the pandemic has given us an opportunity to explore new methods that we wouldn't otherwise have used, and actually they're better. So that medical teaching has been improved by this terrible event, and there has been some silver lining to that cloud. So Professor Norden, perhaps you could kick that one off.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think just to share, because as we said again, we need to be very clear about how can we improve engagement of students. As in the time of the pandemic, we have to think about even small matter like Prof. Widen mentioned, in terms of the timetabling, in terms of how long can you retain student attention, and even at a time when the ordinary things like lectures, for instance, we have in TLS we have what we call as a rewind concept of rewind. Recorded lectures can be viewed by students. So in the sense that some of the lectures can be even given in the form of flipped classroom. They look at the lectures first, go around, and then The only problem that in the preclinical, that is a new student. We always take into consideration that there's new student. Sometimes they're not used to this kind of methodology, right? So it's always at the back of mind is that we can always fall back on the conventional lectures, you know, giving them the usual lectures. But I think the more important one is that the lectures are made into more interactive, because we cannot afford a monologue from the lecturers. It become very boring at the end, and then as we know, some students maybe switch off during lectures. So the timing of the lectures, the duration of the lectures, and then some of these strategies skilled by the tutors and the lecturers are very important. So that's number one. I think number two is that we must also use student, because we have in TELUS we have a very strong student group. We call it TUMS, the Tele University Medical Student Society, and we make use of this society also to increase engagement with students, because it's important that, you know, I think the peer kind of consideration learning is important. So normally we also made use of the senior student to engage with some of the junior one, because they need a lot of this you know, mentorship from this, apart from staff. And the third one we already mentioned about the use of clinical key. I think that's all of us have a touch base. I think that's not an issue, right? Because I think it really helps us in terms of just virtually helping the student to get around about learning new topics, new ideas, and so on. And of course, in some of the teaching session, especially during the some of the session that we have student presentation and so on, seminars we call it. We have seminars, PBL, and so on. This is a time opportunity for us to really get close to the student, because in TELUS we uniquely we have a small number of students, and ours is a dual intake actually for our students. So small intake allowed us to be very close and very personal with students. We know them, right? And I think this is also an element of important strategy, because it, unlike a bigger classroom where you virtually have no control over this interaction. Yeah. So I think that's very important in the TELUS, that we really have to have a personal touch with the student, and also to remind them that even though they are, you know, many of our students are international, and to remind them that although they are far away from us, and everyone has to do online, but I think students are beginning to understand these the difficulties, the realities and the difficulties. But eventually, I think there is this beginning to accept the online. In fact, when we did a survey on the student, many students are willing to go online even after the pandemic. I think that's one of the message that we got, that the online method is not going to go away any soon at all. That is going to be one of the biggest way of delivering our what we call this medical curriculum. And I think this is where clinical key comes in very handy. Thank you.
I think the students are often ahead of us in terms of their willingness to be online and to do things. And the idea of peer teaching, I think, is a very important one. So, Professor Bikramji, do you have some thoughts about how to keep students engaged, how to keep them kind of, you know, ready and willing to learn?
Yeah, right. This is a very challenging thing from our educators and tutors. Well, in our institution, attendance should be 100%. So that's where they come to the class. Initially, we found they are logged in, but maybe somewhere not in the class. So after some weeks, we told them, okay, we have a very small group. We divided, as I told you, is split up into groups. We told them we mandatory to open the cameras so that we can see you. And whenever we go for the discussions, we told them, okay, you can interrupt me. You have every right to ask me questions if you don't understand. So they got some kind of interest. And every session after, say, if it's a 1 hour, after 45, 50 minutes, there are always questions and answers. So if they ask, I could not understand, can you tell me what is that, why you telling this, or I made a mistake. And always we encourage them to go on answering, even if they have some problems. We told them, this is a class, what are the mistakes you need to do now. Later you cannot do. And there is a high time, we have a lot of time because of the online class. Specifically, you have Like if you have a traditional teaching, we have less time for each student. Now, as we divided into so many groups, so it's become very personal, as Prof. Rusli told it. And so you need to be like that. And always we give them some kind of assessment, mostly formative, no low stake your assessments. And after the assessment, we tell them again a self-rating kind of feedback. We call it debriefing. We started like a simulation. So after the session, like if you have a role play by a tutor, you assess them, you tell how much, what are the things, nice things you have done, how you rate yourself, what the things you think have done something wrong. So they come up with the newer and newer things. So that is a very good feedback for us also. And also to keep them engaged, we show them preparations, like they're coming for the OSCE or OSPE exams. So we show them the slides. We show them the real recorded, we have some recorded videos of real patients. We show them how you interact. And then you go on and you do the OSCE. So this is the video. We look at the OSCE stations, let's say like a neck examination. So you tell me what are the things you can add to this video. So they have a little bit of innovativeness we try to find from them. And sometimes they have very good feedback. And the last thing what I like to tell you about this, to our student engagement, well, we have a kind of long case, which we started only after when they go to the hospitals, but we cannot bring back the students. Only the final year come for the third year. We tell the students we go for online your portfolio challenge. So whatever they see in the hospitals, the long case, or whatever they see the procedures, we challenge them. And at the time we engage them because they need to know, I need to come online classes. So kind of classes I need to follow and those things. And this is the way we keep them engaged. Well, still it is a very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Then, one of the things that I think has cropped up is there's a lot more work. You know, and as an instructor, if you can give a lecture to 300 students, as Professor Bikramjit was saying, now you're dividing that up. So how are you managing to do all that extra work and keep the students engaged at the same time?
Well, we have sessionals and fractional lecturers with us. So we divide into say 4 groups. So the last group is around 109 students. So it comes to around 27, 28. So as I told you, we start the lecture class at the same time, same topic. And we already told them how the lecture will go. There should be interactive and always there is time for the student to ask you questions. So that's the way it's become a little bit of like a personal feedback we are giving. So they like that. And also during these classes also, we cannot have all the cameras on. Whenever the last 10-15 minutes we have a discussion, you need to open your cameras.
Right. So Professor Then, maybe you could add some more sort of thoughts about how to manage student engagement and how long students can pay attention for online without drifting off or checking Facebook or other things.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah. So actually, I start to think how we can make the students good engagement. So first, we need to know that what is the limitation from their side. So we did the one research, qualitative research. I interviewed with the final year students. Now they already graduate. I did the focus group interview. So what are the limitations from their side? What are the advantages of online teachings? So I hasn't published yet, already submitted, but what I can see is that one thing is the distraction. So because the students are there, sometimes they are staying with their family, they have their business, their own business. Sometimes this distraction is one of the problems for students to engage properly in our teaching. So we have to advise the students that private place, good privacy, and then this is also very important. Most of the educators didn't aware. So we cannot always blame on the student why you cannot concentrate, right? So what type of environment they are staying. So this one also we have to understand from the student side, and we have to find a way how we can improve this. So one more thing I can see from their side is the demotivation, because they are used to it, that they used to go to the hospital, their daily life is totally stopped. So they became demotivated. So because of this, our duty is not only to educate them, we also have to motivate and counsel them. This is also very important to attract their engagement. And also anxiety. Their anxiety is because of they worry about the pandemic, or they worry about their exam. So we have to reassure them. We have to reassure them, if we cannot cover this, we are not going to ask you in the exam, final exam. Our exam will be fair and square for the students. Right? Actually, yes, we also really practice this. It's not fair for the students because they do not have the exposure for 1 year, 2 years, right? So this is before preparation, before you start the online teaching, you have to understand the student psychology. But
right.
I think, yeah, upside of the online teaching is flexibility. So this one, we should take this opportunity, flexibility of the online teaching. Student no need to get up very early to rush to hospital, no need to find for the parking. So they can save a lot of time. So most of the girls, right, they need to make up and they need to get an early shower. So they can save also a lot of time. Our side also, actually, we can save a lot of time for this. So we can take this opportunity to. So this is the thing I suggest, a formative assessment, MCQ test, because there is a less time we have to travel to campus, at least 30 minutes drive. So we have to find a parking place in hospital. So almost every day we save 1 hour every day. Yeah. So what I did is that I gave them the reading assignment, then formative assessment. So this is the one thing we can make them engaged. But also, yes, we have to motivate them, we have to reassure them, and we have to understand their environment also. And also, like just now, Prof. Vikram said, so managing the many patients, but online teaching is one of the advantages is that, like our webinar, more than around 200, we can give the information, but yes, this is not the academic teaching, right? But you give the information, but we are not sure how many of them grasp what you want to say.
Right.
So what you have to say is you have to follow up. So this is not our academic teaching session, so we are not going to follow up. But in our academic teaching session, this is the one of the advantages of online teaching. So, but if you can follow up properly, then we can manage, I think, okay, 200 also, right? 150 also, okay. You give the information, but make sure your information is rich, and then they understand by feedback and follow-up session. So this is I understand this is the manageable way to manage students.
Yeah. So Professor Law, so what are your thoughts about managing student engagement and the psychology of the students as learners?
I think I was going to mention that, in fact, one thing that I have learned from this pandemic is that, the curriculum, the learning goes on while the lecture halls are empty. And how much, in fact, that we have taken this face-to-face learning or teaching for granted in the past. I mean, we spent time on lectures, and which I have never been really in favor of anyway. And so with, like Prof. Norton was saying, that students they have accepted online learning for these things anyway, and I think part of us, we have accepted that too, and I think a lot of that will continue in the future. And so we can, well, one thing that we can do is that for the more mundane teaching, for example, lectures, I think there are needs for certain lectures, and these can be done recorded, and they can go through it by themselves. so we don't have to do it live, and we can actually assess their knowledge through different assessment, so that we know that they are actually taking in the materials. Now, to answer your question about how to keep them engaged, again, I think we need to be mindful, I think, of how, like you said, but not student psychology, but human psychology, really, not just students. You know, we have to give more breaks, I think, and also switch around the different modalities of presentation. It's not just basically talking to them. I mean, if we can mix it up with video clips or other forms of engagement, I think that would help as well. Again, I think if we can try to keep them on their toes, if we have, you know, have these bits of quizzes or assessment added to the session, that would probably help as well. Now, when we do come back to teaching on campus, this is what I have been thinking about. I don't have the answers, but I think we really want to try to take this precious face-to-face time to the next level by optimizing our interactive teaching and learning. I think that's what I have to say.
I think that's very important. I think that the value of that face-to-face time has become so much more apparent that I think everybody is thinking about what's the best way to use that hour rather than just using it in a rather mundane way. So I'm very conscious of the time. We had a final question, which was about using MCQ assessments to identify underlying misconceptions. And I think that actually we've touched on this topic of using wrong answers. Professor Bikramjit had mentioned, you know, you show students incorrect materials to force them to think about what is actually correct, which I thought was a very interesting insight. But I wonder, in order to respect everybody's time, I wonder if the panel would mind if we went straight to the question and answer session now to hear from all of our audience about things that they, you know, want to learn more about, and we have about 10 minutes to do that. Natasha, does that seem like a good plan?
Yes, indeed. I've already informed the audience on the chat that we will extend this panel by 15 minutes, simply because the insights that we're getting from our speakers are so very useful. Thank you so much for our speakers from Taylor's University and RCSI in UCD Malaysia campus. David, please carry on. I've already informed the audience.
So I guess I'm just looking at the questions and answers. Let's see. I see a question about low stakes assessment, and I think that one of the things that all the panelists have actually sort of mentioned is the using repeated, very small assessments, not assessments that have a sort of a major effect on students' careers, but using them both as a way to keep students interested during the lecture, but also to help them understand their learning. And I wonder if how the panel would intend to keep using formative assessment, small assessments for learning to help students going forward. I wonder if anyone has any thoughts about how their practice is going to change using things they've learned from formative assessment since the pandemic began. Anyone want to take that?
Can I just share? Because David, I think the issue about or the fact that we know that, you know, assessment drives learning, right? We know that very much. When there is assessment, there is learning. It's always important to emphasize to students that, you know, at the end of the day you'll be assessed. But again, the issue about formative assessment. So I think the corollary of that is that we need to factor that into what we do with the student. For example, during teaching, I'm very conscious about, you know, posing question at the beginning of, say, a lecture, posing question, because that in a way wakes up the student from slumber. Because as I said, normally this monologue is not a way to teach students. In fact, that's why I think we are beginning to. There are also thinking about whether there should be lessening of lectures, that we must bring in more of interactive sessions. So these are kind of small thing as mentioned. Is that to introduce at the lecture is some question that will let students pause and reflect on what are the issues that we are going to introduce in the lecture. And then other things like the frequency of online assessment. We have online assessment, continuous assessment, we call it assessment. This is also important, and they are given in small packet, small doses, we call it in medicine, small doses, because we do not want to overwhelm the student. So that's why I think some of the resources, including key, that we are fantastic to be able to extract some of these small doses of assessment material to be given to students, and not only MCQ, but I think sometimes we also have we devise ourselves thing like short essay question. Our system, the theory papers, we have the MCQ, we have the short essay, and then we also have a component of OSPI and also OSCE, right, in the preclinical. So it's about being judicious about of this kind of exposure to students. Quizzes, you name it, even podcasts that we give. Sometimes if we are lucky enough to have YouTube, what do you call this, which are very good in certain areas, we can share. So I think learning becomes active, interactive and active. It's not a passive thing. And students, I think, are looking forward to this. But I think the value we learn is that during this kind of interaction, the student feels that the lecturers care about them. I think that's the main thing. It must be a feeling of caring for students to learn. We care for them in their journey of learning. I think that's a message we always give to our students. Not there just to teach, but we care about them. So I think that's like Prof. Bin was mentioning about motivation. That I guess keeps up the motivation to learn during this time of pandemic. We know that students in various parts of the world, which are students international, will have experienced a lot of their mental anguish during this time. But we hope that through this engagement, there is some what we call this silver lining of hope, that a student will feel that the value of caring from their teachers, I think, is very important to support them in this difficult time.
As you were talking, this question sort of appeared. Given how competitive medical students are and how performance oriented they are, do they actually, when they take a formative assessment, are they focused on getting it right versus learning from the things that they don't understand? Professor Then, is that a thing that they're so obsessed with perfection that they can't actually enter into the spirit of formative learning, formative assessment, where the point is actually you learn more by getting the questions wrong than by getting the questions right? Anyone on the panel have some thoughts about that topic?
Can I start?
Yes.
We'd like to tell you, we have, this pandemic has showed your summative assessment is not the last word to assess a student. And like the Western wall, we need to go into formative assessment. And what are the advantages of formative assessment? Because it is a small group we are taking. Second of all, almost very minimum stress. As I told one of the your viewer is asking for, and the students can open their mind. So at the end of the day, we found the learning outcome is better. If you have high-step exam, like your pass or fail in a summative exam, sometimes due to fear, they may not open up. They don't want to make mistakes. So sometimes even they are very good students, they may not score well because they think I can speak something wrong and my marks may be deducted. in formative assessment, you always encourage them, okay, you speak out. So, and there is no pass and fail. This is only the feedback we are giving you back. Mm-hmm. And we always assess them in a form of debriefing. So as I told earlier, we take them, the 6 or 7 students, and discuss among yourself, give a scenario online, and tell what are the things you need to do, and end of the session, what are the mistakes you did. And the other good thing in formative assessment, where we can use the MCQs, and you know very well MCQs is the highest order assessment. So we use the MCQs judiciously. It's not like that. MCQ has to be assessed only for summative assessments. So in MCQs, we made it a point, well, there may be one answer which is most correct, but there may be all the answers which are all correct. That means it are really correct. So when you see a patient, you don't think you make a diagnosis which is absolutely correct. That complaint may have other diagnoses. So you can expand your mind. So this is one. But again, I like to tell you, whatever we did, the learning outcome little bit may be debatable, and sometimes we may not achieve. But the one good thing, the learning outcome also happened to us. We learned a lot from the students also. So this is the way I see how you assess and how the formative assessment help both us preparing them, and also the feedback from them, how we make ourselves better and better.
So this is the fact that the learning has gone both ways, that the students you've developed new ways to teach the students, but you as teachers have learned. I was thinking, Professor Law, you had made some comments about, lectures had never been your favored necessarily method. I was wondering if you were thinking that going forward, how are you going to change your lecture practice going, kind of once the pandemic is over? Are they going to be radically different, or are they going to be?
Well, in fact, for psychiatry, I have already taken out a lot of the lectures, and for the more general topics of psychiatry. So I don't think the lecture part will be that much different after the pandemic. I think a lot of them, like I said, we will still have a little bit of that, but most of them will be online, that students can actually assess whenever they want to assess. Okay, and you were talking about the formative assessment, how we're going to do that. I think, well, for my department, we actually have weekly quizzes for the students when they are doing our rotation. Now, I think one thing is very important is that when we do these assessments, we must give them feedback. So we do have the quizzes are multiple choice, and so what we do now is we make sure that, like you said, these students are very competitive, and sometimes they just want the right answer. They don't care whether what they are learning or not. So I think it's important to, if we are giving them the multiple choice quizzes, then we have to also provide explanations of why this is right, why this is wrong, so that they can actually learn something from the quizzes rather than just try to get 100% and move on. I think that would be important for any kind of formative assessment, is that they get adequate feedbacks.
Right. This is as you're talking, and we've talked a lot about multiple choice questions, and I know that students tend to practice multiple choice questions. They will sit down and they'll do 200 multiple choice questions before the exams to kind of cram it in. And I wonder, maybe Professor Then, you had any thoughts about more authentic types of assessment? What's the evolution of the multiple choice question? Taking Professor Law's comment about that feedback, mechanism from a multiple choice. I wonder if you have some thoughts on that topic.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Yeah. So now we are talking about the formative assessment. So the question is where this question will come from. So who's going to prepare? So are we going to prepare? So if we plan to do 10 formative assessment, are we going to prepare the 10 question set? So what are you going to do with your final exam? So this is the solution. Say LCVA this is one of the solution. So now we used to say this assessment right learning. Assessment right learning is we refer to the formative assessment. Students, they drive themselves for their learning from the formative assessment, and then they can also learn from their mistake. So because of this, we are not supposed to prepare all the questions by ourselves, because most of the educators know how much we have to use time to prepare the good MCQ questions. So because of this good quality question, we have to keep ourselves a high stake exam also. And this is the challenge for the educator. So it is really helpful for the students and educators, something like platform like this LCVA. So we can save a lot of time from ourselves also, from student side also. So this is one of the advantages. So how we try to improve is, I saw in the one of the questions, how we can prevent the cheating the student. So yeah, how we prepare is, we all know about the students' knowledge, understanding, so cognitive levels. So we prepare the MCQ question a little bit higher order, not only recall. So if you recall, just Google type in that, they can find the answer immediately. If it is not understanding, then recall the student, they might not directly straightforward the recall memory questions. So this is the way we can construct the MCQ questions, a little bit higher order thinking. So one practical practice, what we did is that last time we gave 1.5 minutes per question. In online, we give only 1 minute. We reduce, because last time is that they have to share in their OMR sheet. They have to give time for this. Now is they just click the correct answer. So we did the analysis, and then even 1 minute is more than enough for this. So we reduce the time so that we can prevent the communication from each other. So first way, we try to reconstruct the question in the higher order thinking, not memory recall. Second, control with the time. That we control with our monitoring, two-device monitoring system.
All right.
So this is the way we try to prevent the cheating from the assessment. So the way we prepare the question is like just now I explained, more higher order thinking question we need for online assessment. So to answer your previous question, we already decide we will continue the theory teaching online regardless of the pandemic situation in our university. We all see that we are comfortable and that we can manage. So, but yes, I understand, like just now, there is a some limitation. We need to modify a little bit our teaching time to get the more student engagement. So far, we have confidence that we have the reasonable response from the student, so they are very comfortable. We also have the some promising result. So even after pandemic, we continue to do with the online teaching together with the like just now, lectures, activity, followed by lectures and activity slides. Yeah, we are going to do this.
So I wonder, and this, I mean, as we're reaching the end, this might be the sort of the very sort of, in a sense, sort of radical question is, if students can study from anywhere, maybe they can use lectures from Professor Law, and then they can get lectures from someone else at some other university, and so on and so on. And the piece of medical education that's rooted in place, which is the sort of the touching the patient, as it were, maybe in 10 years' time, students will do quite a lot of their studying with a variety of different universities, and they'll pick courses and lectures from people, from the lecturers that their friends recommend, that their peers recommend, and so on and so on. So maybe that will change medical education in ways that we haven't anticipated. Any thoughts about that sort of, as it were, slightly off the wall idea towards the end of our session, that that we may no longer be as rooted in a specific place. Any thoughts on that one?
Maybe just something, David, on that as a parting message that we've been thinking about few of these things from your comment. Number one is the I think we need to now to disengage ourselves from traditional thinking about having things on campus. Even now we are saying that even our faculty, our teaching staff, they don't have to be really in the campus at all. There could be faculty anywhere in the world, because the message is that the offering is all online. It's digital, right? You don't need the guy there. Sort of, thinking about now. I'm thinking about hologram. People can come, but it's more than that now. That the faculty can be virtual. That they can anywhere. So that also means a new governance in university, of hiring our staff. They don't have to be physically on campus. They can be anywhere. This one. And then number two, in TELUS, we are beginning to think about having what we now call it virtual hospital. This is still a concept, but we're working hard on it, looking at what are the elements of a virtual hospital. There's lots of input from AI, and this even issue about robotic medicine come in and so on. I think this is a futuristic thing about medicine that we need to think, as I said, out of the box. That no longer is something that we have to borrow from the past, but it's something very futuristic for students. And coming back to your point about students can learn from, it's true, from anywhere, anytime. I think that in other words, it's almost like the world is at their foot. They can do what they like. I mean, because we already have given them the tools of learning, so they need to use this tool as much as possible, effectively, and these are millennial students. They are not our batch. Their thinking are different. They are all very savvy about IT. So I guess that's what is going to happen in the future. Very much into this, as I say, AI, robotic, and this virtual, augmented reality. You name it, yeah. Augmented reality, extreme reality, call it, are not beginning to be looked upon as some tools of teaching. So this is my parting message. Thank you.
So we're very nearly at time. So I wonder if we could just go sort of around, and if any sort of some closing thoughts about the world since COVID and the world that we're hopefully emerging into post-COVID. So Professor Then, would you like to go first? Your sort of closing thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Yeah, so actually at the end of the day, so we have to change our mindset and our expectation. Not only we, our stakeholder also we have to change. We cannot expect that really cannot happen. So like just now you said, is it possible one day all virtual hospital? Yes, right. So still possible. Maybe one day all of the medical students will be educated without the patient, but our learning outcomes, right, might change. And then the way of thinking of our stakeholder might change. Maybe one day they will decide we will train a student with the face-to-face with the patient only in the hospital life, 2 years. This is still possible because we cannot predict how much AI improve within 2-3 years, right? So still, but one thing we have to understand is that we cannot replace the human touch. So I remember my medical student life, when I was in third year, one of my lecturers hold my hand and put on the patient abdomen and then show me how to block the kidney. Now, almost more than 20 years, I still cannot forget this feeling. Yep. So because of this, we are going to treat the patient. We cannot go without the patient. This is the reality. But yes, we can change our way of educating to the student. So from start to where we will start to train, then based on our current situation, how we can modify our way of teachings. So we are not talking about that we will go medicine without human being, not like that. So we still need the patient, but in what point of our education, we will really start to train with our real patient. So this one is one day, yes, all the educator will consider. Actually, like Prof. Rusli mentioned just now, we are doing virtual hospital project together with the Faculty of bioscience and faculty of pharmacy. So I'm also one author, but program writer in this. So I wrote one of the pilot project for diabetic patients. So hopefully we can in pictures in 1 year. So, but I still have a fear that we cannot replace the human touch.
So now, Professor Bikramjit, your last thoughts on the world after COVID, as it were?
Yeah, right. So we have changed ourselves, the traditional teachers, and we need to change also. A little bit of things I'd like to tell you about our learning outcomes. We know we can teach now. The COVID-19 has showed us the theoretical portion can be taught online totally. Problem starts with the clinical part, but the greatest advantage, what we can teach the students in small groups is the effective part, the ethical part, the professionalism, which was very low during our traditional teaching. Now look at the back, the clinical part. Well, we can have very good videos of simulated patients, as Prof. Rusli told us also about virtual reality, where the students can interact directly. And also you need to think about the last part, which is very important. You need a very good internet connection, which most of the participants are telling about. So everything we can do, except the clinical skills teaching. But the most important, we need to make it assured whether we can have a very good internet connection so that we can access and we can have very kind of interactive sessions. So that's the way I think we look into it. It changed. And I think for the future, we need to have more and more online modes, and we will continue.
Excellent. Professor Law, very quickly, your last thoughts.
All right. So I think COVID is really is just a huge wake-up call for many things, and but at the same time, I think it actually opens up many avenues for us as well. I think we can actually do a lot more than we think we could, and I also agree with Professor Loden about the future, the AI, the virtual reality aspects of things, and I think that these things will come in, and they should come in sooner rather than later, and so I think well, basically, I think we know now that we can do a lot more than we thought we could, and I think the future is going to be quite exciting.
I think so, yes. So, so Professor Norden, one very last quick comment.
Well, I don't know whether I got any more comments, but I think that is what I think the trajectory of medical education, because that's the way I think the world moves, and that's the way I think we are moving as well. And one of the things I mentioned to my student, I said, you'll be surprised one day, that the guy who's in the hospital sitting beside you is not a human, it's a robot, and you could have a robot become your assistant, and for that matter, later on, it may even be teaching you in the hospital. Yeah. So I think that the scenario is very clear to us. I think these are things that we cannot abandon anymore. It is the march of modernization is gone. So I think so the note about it is that we have to unlearn and relearn ourselves. The teachers, it's not only students. I think the impact is on the teachers as well. Mindsets has to change. We have to discard all ways of thinking, all ways of doing things. I think that's very important in order to align with this new so-called millennium of thinking about medical education. And I hope that and again it tells us we have this a motto of teach less, learn more. Teach less, learn more, because the idea is that teaching becoming lesser and lesser because student is taking empowered to learn. They are given the tools of learning. They must be taught how to learn. Yes. If they are taught how to learn, then I think that's where the progress is, because that's what the student must be doing. Because when they become professional, when they become specialists later on, they must be using the same methodology again of teaching themselves, learning how to learn what you call this medicine in the new millennium. Thank you.
So So thank you very much. I think this has been a fascinating conversation. I know that I've learned a lot and sort of understood things that differently than before. And so I would like to thank all of our panelists for their insight and for their time, and thank all of the attendees and for their questions. And I hope that you found it a very useful and valuable session. I know I have. Thank you very much indeed.